So Rebecca, as a teenager in the 80s and someone who thought of himself as an alternative boy, before they had...
There was no name for it.
There was no name for it. We called ourselves... Well, it was before goth. We called ourselves bat cavers.
Oh, yeah.
I would go to dance clubs with my friends.
Underage clubs.
And I would dance in a
certain way
that was not the way that everyone else was dancing. In fact, there was a very famous local dance club in Renton, which is south of Seattle. They had 2 rooms. They had the top 40 room where they would play Whitney Houston and whatnot. And then they had the alternative room, which they would play Bauhaus and New Order.
Bring it.
And Depeche Mode.
The good stuff.
Yeah, the Smiths. And I would go into the alternative room, and all my friends would go into the top 40 room, and the top 40 room would just be packed with girls. And the alternative room would have me and another weird guy. And we would be dancing on the dance floor in this very particular way.
Yes.
This is before the internet.
Right.
I don't know.
How did we all learn it?
I think I saw it from an upperclassman at my high school. That seems the most likely.
He was probably wearing black pointy shoes and white socks.
John Flew vlogs all the way. And on Facebook yesterday, I saw a post from you, Rebecca, where you danced so well in that genre. One, I had no idea that you were one of those, I mean, you know, a Jewish kid from, San Diego at the time?
Yeah, I learned it in Berkeley, which was a hotbed of alternative dancing, like Madness, the Smiths. We do all of, I brought those alternative dances with me.
Okay.
It brought back memories.
I would not have thought that you were a cool alt kid dancer. I don't know why that seems so different, but I can't believe how good I tried to dance well in that genre, but it didn't take much to become at least one of the prominent alt dancers at my high school because no one else is doing it.
Right. I mean, you know, there are 5 people dancing like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's funny about that video, is it a Bronski Beat song or it's in that genre, you and me together dancing?
Small Town Boy.
Small Town Boy. So there's a whole TikTok trend of dancing to that song. And a friend showed it to me and who's the generation below us and said, are they dancing correctly? And showed me all the people. And I was like, oh, that one could buy anything that she wanted at the mall in the 80s. Like I was naming who all the types were. and I was started to comment like, oh, that one has it. Oh, that one has the moves. Oh, right, that move. But I was like, none of them are doing a very specific dance. And is it up to me to teach the children this? Right.
We don't see this dance in the echo culture that we have. You know, there's certain things that survived from the 80s and certain things that have just been lost to history. And this dance, the way that I conceived of it when I was 14 was that you put your feet together.
Right. So you'll see me in the video instruct. Like I say.
Oh, I didn't even see that.
Okay. So if you watch it again, watch where I say feet together, knees together, and then your hands do this like entrancing thing.
And there's different variations, like you upper body wise might have different sorts of movements, but it's very feminine, I would say. It's not masculine, it's not manly, it's not aggressive, you know. But you definitely have to have your feet together the whole
together,
time.
very important.
And you don't move your feet. There was a version where you could move your feet, where you would sort of kick your foot out, like sort of and then but it's hard to describe. But I was extremely impressed, Rebecca, with your alt 1984 dancing. And if you go on YouTube, you can find music videos or, you know, videos of dance clubs where they're dancing to stuff like Kraftwerk and early Tears for Fears.
Yeah.
And they'll have those, what people would call flock of seagulls, but they're not flock of seagulls hair. It's more just like Till Tuesday hair would be Amy Mann hair.
Yeah, Laurie Anderson hair.
And the black outfits, maybe black, but maybe not. But often all the way up to the neck. It sort of had like a 20s theme.
Right. Well, it was New Romantic.
Right.
So it was like a lot of heavy flouncy. But what's super kind of interesting about me was I did not have the correct style. So although I could do the dance, I am not going to the right thrift store and don't have the panache to go full what would be considered goth. So I'm not wearing black.
Well, it wasn't black, because black was certainly on the table. Mm-hmm. But when these people morphed into goths, and then it became all about black. But for me, for example, I had this red cardigan sweater.
I also had a red sweater.
I think I would wear like a white turtleneck underneath it or something. And I had a red flouncy pants. Mm-hmm. And
pictures, please. We must search for pictures.
And so, yeah, I didn't have outfits that fit that thing.
And there was a lot of like bi-level, like really short in the front, really long in the back, button-up shirts. And I noticed I'm still really attracted to that style. And then huge, everything fit like, yeah.
It was this brief moment where everyone, particularly girls, would wear the most voluminous parachute size shirts and very tight
leggings.
Pants.
Yeah. And pegged. Do you remember you would peg your Levi's so tight that you couldn't get them on and off?
Because we didn't have skinny jeans back then.
So there was no stretchy material, so you safety pinned your jeans.
Because otherwise you wouldn't be able to get them on.
Right. Yeah. So
or they had those
zippers.
Those zipper ones. Yeah. I think was that Guess that
Guess
had the
jeans.
zipper?
Yeah. I had 3 pairs of Guess jeans that I wore till they shredded. They literally shredded. Well, and I want to say what gets like if you go to an 80s party, people are often in neon with a side ponytail.
Right.
And like that was a very specific, very wealthy girl.
Yeah.
Like
they were from Kirkland. We always thought of them as from Kirkland and Mercer Island.
Yeah. Whereas like we're talking much more like Pretty in Pink.
Yes.
Vintage
right.
store.
So Ducky is a good.
Yes. Yeah. So, and like,
I think he might even wear a brooch.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you're wondering what we're talking about, lots of cardigan sweaters, things that you could find at the thrift store for 99 cents. I mean, so to my junior prom, I will have to show you a photo. I was the only girl in a vintage dress.
On my senior prom, I wore a smattering of stuff from Value Village, a secondhand store that is not for fashionistas. Value Village back then was for people who couldn't afford anything else.
Right. This is why the grunge movement, they're all in plaid shirts because that's what was at the thrift store.
Well, and it was layers because if you were out and about, you're on the bus or you're walking around town. Seattle, it's all about layers because it could be cold in the morning and, relatively warmer or humid in the afternoon. And you can't bring a parka because parkas can't really wrap around your waist easily. So you got to have like 5 or 6 layers and flannels really lend themselves to that. And then eventually, fast forward to 1992 and you have runway models with flannel layers wrapped around their waist.
Right, because they got, right.
Because it's fashionable. Yeah, so Ducky, I'm looking at pictures. I forgot how he exactly represents this kind of, he literally has the outfit on of a brooch and a bolo tie.
Oh, bolo ties.
With a high collar shirt and then a very fashionable but, vintage coat on, like suit coat.
Yeah, so I wore to school a smoking jacket, a floor-length smoking jacket that was maroon with yellow polka dots.
Yeah. And that you got from a secondhand store, yeah.
Yeah, and I wonder, like, did people just think I was insane? But I thought I was the coolest thing that had ever happened.
Yeah. Well, I was pretentious too, Rebecca. And I decided that I was never going to wear jeans in high school, not one day, blue jeans. Mm-hmm. I would wear pink. I had a pink pair of jeans. I had a white pair of jeans. But I would never wear blue jeans because that was what the normies did. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I was too cool for school because back then, everyone, regardless of gender, age, the teachers, everybody wore Levi's 501 jeans for all occasions. Occasionally you'd have a girl in Jordache or Guess. So I want to talk about something. Someone emailed in.
Okay.
Page.
And thank you for the compliment. Posting that video has been hysterical.
Yeah, go to rtext, RTEXT on Instagram to watch Rebecca do. If I would have seen you on the dance floor, I would have been like, holy shit, that girl, like, she knows what she's doing. She must be from Europe.
It's really all about the hands. If you can just imagine that your hands are magic.
But upper body,
rhythm. I inherently had rhythm, which is strange for a white girl.
which I did not know. I didn't know you had rhythm.
Just to out myself, I'm a good dancer.
Can you sing?
I cannot sing.
So I have a theory that most people,
It's one or the
it's
other.
one or the other.
Yeah.
Most of the people in my family, most of the people in my friend group, it's one or the other. It's rare that someone has both.
Yeah, I inherently have good rhythm. I can clap on the 1 or the 2, which is really rare in Seattle.
You mean the 2 or the 4? Oh, you mean you can clap on the 1 and the 3 or the 2 and the 4?
Yeah.
I see.
Which sets me apart.
Yeah, it can, unfortunately.
Because in Seattle, clapping is like a lost art in general. But
It's too white in Seattle.
yeah. But I don't know. I have inherently good rhythm, and I took a lot of dance classes as a kid. I took tap, jazz, ballet.
But that doesn't guarantee that you would have good rhythm.
So I am very curious if American Bandstand must have showed that dance. So I religiously watched American Bandstand every Saturday morning. It came out at 10 or
I forgot
something.
about that. Yeah.
And you would see New Romantic kids on that show because they would have the hippest kid of every. And there were also dance shows. There would be local dance shows. And I'm curious if one of the Bay Area dance shows that they were
Seattle,
so hip.
Seattle had a dance show called Seattle Bandstand that I was on.
What?
That I have every 5 years or so. I will go on the internet on the deepest, darkest of the Google searches to search for a video clip of me dancing. I remember watching it broadcast after it was recorded, and there's a very prominent scene of me dancing
Oh
to
my God.
How Would I Know by Whitney Houston.
This is amazing.
And I'm 95% sure I'm wearing a cardigan sweater similar to the one that Kurt Cobain would feature in his Smells Like Teen Spirit video.
Yellow or brown,
like
some horrible color.
6 years later.
Yeah.
And I'm probably trying to dance like you, but I'm not dancing like you. All right, so I have an email.
Okay.
Patron Arnett from New York. She says, Rebecca, are you familiar with the boy mom culture on social media?
No. Well, you mean like mob, like mother of boys?
No.
Okay.
So I pulled some clips. So you're going to have to get out of your chair.
Oh, what is this?
And you're going to move away from your microphone.
Okay.
And we're going to watch some clips. So this is YouTube channel Funky Frog Bait. Okay.
Ooh.
So to describe this video, and I know this is terrible audio podcasting, but it's a very common sort of video, which is a mom who is very, very close, intimately close with her boy, which is fine. And on TikTok, of course, the boy's face wouldn't be blurred out. And then there's this song playing over, and then there's this caption, and it says, making sure my son can cook so he's not impressed by your daughter's Stouffer's lasagna. And then she looks at the camera, and she's very very intimidating. And the boy, incidentally, is what, like 6, 7 years old? She's saying to all the girls out there, stay away from my boy because he's mine. And the way she's close to him and the way she's looking at the camera, it's largely just for jokes. But I'll play another video here. So,
oh my God.
So here's another one where another mom looks, again, bitchy at the camera, and she's with her, looks like maybe a 14, 15-year-old boy. And the caption says, teaching my sons to cook so your hot pocket thoughty daughter doesn't impress him. In other words, I'm with my boy so that your slutty, promiscuous daughter can't pull him away from me. So I'll play another one here. So there's a whole series of videos on TikTok where the 8-year-old boy comes home from school and announces that he has a girlfriend. And the mom is pleading with him, saying, "Don't have a girlfriend. No, don't." And again, it's not serious. It's not like the moms are like thrashing the boy around, but it has a certain theme to it, right? It's a romantic connection theme that is being displayed here. Let's watch another video. So then another video here, a young mom with 2 young boys, maybe 7 and 4-ish. And the caption says, "Raising boys who are obsessed with me so their future wife can't say they are going to her side for the holidays." Raising boys who are obsessed with me. And the boys seem to be, very much, appreciating the affection from mom. Let's watch another one. So another one here, a mom is making sandwiches, "Just making my sons a girlfriend sandwich as she eats everything in my house." So this is hopefully just a joke video, but the mom is making a sandwich with a bunch of pepper, like hot pepper in it, as if to say, "I'm going to give her this sandwich so that my son's girlfriend will experience pain from how hot it is." So get back on the mic there, Rebecca. So what patron Arnett from New York says is, "My concern is about mothers who seem to conflate parental love with romantic love. Some of these women apparently see themselves as adversaries to their toddler's future romantic partners. Can you please opine? What causes this phenomenon?" Mm-hmm. So, Rebecca, what do you think?
Well, in watching the videos, for me, it was about attachment, that this fantasy that your child will never individuate from you, which is a completely unrealistic fantasy. And I know these videos are for fun, but it causes huge amount of tension when kids become adolescents and they inherently start individuating from their moms and, making different decisions than their moms would want to make. Also, there is an epidemic of loneliness in our culture, and kids can be a great source of love, but also I see this a lot in my practice, that so many few adults across the board, like I think 15% of men in America have 0 friends. And that's true for women too, right? Because the way that we raise children now in America is you don't have an extended community. Most of your time is spent shuttling your kids between different activities, and you lose yourself in that process. You don't have hobbies. You don't have fun stuff that you do. So in a way, parents are in this bind where they don't have a lot of time to socialize. The only community they get is their nuclear family. Just like the myth in marriage that your partner will be able to meet all your needs, there's a myth in our culture, that a very damaging myth, that your children will be able to meet all your needs. And then hopefully you survive early adolescence where, your child may individuate intensely and you guys may spend 4 years screaming at each other. And then right after that, for most kids, if they can afford to move out or go to college, you're dealing with empty nester stuff right after that. So your kids will leave you unless you live in a very communal culture in which your kids will not leave you. But I can't tell you how many clients I have over the years who've processed in-laws not getting along with them and it being a very competitive, awful, hostile relationship. So this is a fun TikTok trend, but I think it points out something that is very, very common. I mean, how many movies have been made about toxic in-laws, right? Like, this is not new.
Right. I think that's part of it. And I hadn't thought about the angles that you did, Rebecca, and that seems likely to be the most of it. But the in-law thing has always boggled me, because in my family and extended family, I've never had this association with the in-laws as being the enemy. My family is big and there's a lot of in-laws. And it's just not something I encounter. But I've heard that people have those associations and have in-laws that they don't get along with, which, I understand. I feel bad, but it gets blanketly applied to any in-law, and for some reason, particularly mothers-in-law. I think because of sexism, also because, mothers tend to be more involved, more interested on average than fathers will be, on average, of course. But that's I think, trend. But I think most of it is just sexism, because you never hear about fathers-in-law, and you got to imagine some real doozies of some fathers-in-law.
But you do have a lot of those memes of like dad with a shotgun.
Right. So that's the other part, that reversing the gender isn't always one for one, but let's just do it as a thought experiment. This has been a trope in our culture for decades. I'm guessing it goes back over 100 years of a joke / being serious, where you have a father who is standing at the door, maybe even with a gun, and like, who are you? Dating my daughter. Or a father with an 8-year-old girl, and if you took a picture and you said that you had the caption and over it was like, making sure that I'm close to my daughter, so that when a boyfriend comes along, he'll think twice before he gets together with her. The way that culture sees that is, what a wonderful dad. But when a mom does it, she's disgusting. Why is that? Because of sexism. Also, we have a phobia about closeness between parents and children today. We have a phobia about closeness in general and intimacy in general. But you pose, like, I can't, it's maddening. There will be, I talk about this sometimes, but this really typifies it. There's a reality TV show, 90 Day Fiancé, I was watching, and there's a family from Samoa, and the man, he's, I don't know, in his early mid-20s or something. He hasn't seen his mom in a while, and he sees his mom, and they kiss. It looks like they might kiss on the lips, but later it looked like it was just, in the frantic greeting, they were kissing both on the cheek at the same time or something. But even if they were kissing on the lips, people were freaking out, including his wife, was like, oh, that's so disgusting. And she held on to that idea for a long time, and that seemed to be the dominant point of view. The show edited it to make it look, the music they were playing, I think, was to play up how disgusting and enmeshed it was. Because, it's a good drama story. It's like you got the new couple, and then the mother-in-law comes and she kisses the boy, and he's a little mama's boy. And this idea that even if you kiss your mom on the lips, that somehow you're going down a slippery slope of having sex with your mom. I mean, fuck off, people. It's fine. Many parents will kiss their kids on the lips. And just saying that out loud, I just know that there's going to be a large contingent of people that are like, no, I'm not condoning sexual abuse.
Right. I think there's a level of intimacy in different cultures. Like in European cultures, men kiss. That doesn't happen here in the States.
We don't do anything. We don't touch. We don't hold hands. We don't hug, especially after COVID. Like, it was already a cold culture. Now it's the coldest. So this notion. So I think when we see videos like this, it ties it. Now, is there a problem with parents who romanticize their children? Yes, we have a term for this in family therapy and in systems theory regarding, there's various different terms for it, but we will call it a marital role. You as a child, you could be the scapegoat, you could be the star, you could be the forgotten one, and you can also be the marital role, meaning that as a child, it's your role to be a spouse to one or both of your parents. Usually it's one. And that can look a lot of different ways, but it's a form of enmeshment and diffuse boundaries. And the child loses because they have to grow up way too fast. They take on way too much responsibility.
And they take up a lot of the intimacy. I mean, I think that was a key factor in the way that I was abused, is that my abuser would touch me in public like you would touch a spouse, and people would notice and think that's weird and gross, but no one would say anything. But I was definitely in that role.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because if you're disturbed as an adult and you're longing normally for romantic connection, you might target a defenseless child who can't break up with you because you're not together, anyway, and they're small and impressionable and physically weak. And if no one's listening to the child, then it's easy to get away with it, and you can get your needs met in a way. Meanwhile, absolutely traumatizing and harming a young child.
And I also, I see this a lot so in Seattle, there's a certain culture in marriages where in heterosexual marriages, but some gay marriages, the high wage earning spouse is at a tech company or some other job where the hours are insane. When they get home, they just want to play video games or do their hobby.
Smoke pot.
When Washington State started to do research when pot was getting legalized, and they were trying to figure out who the consumer was, and they realized it was like a 40-year-old white guy with a lot of income to spend, and they were shocked that that's who the average...
Why was that shocking?
I don't know. Anyways, that's a total...
Because the stereotype would be it's like
a 20-year-old...
or...
Yeah. Anyways, total side note. So you have a lot of women who are starved for attention and intimacy, and I can think of a lot of examples where I've seen women turn to their kids for the level of intimacy and connection and friends and, mommy's best pal that you would hope in a marriage would come from the spouse, but it's just not.
Yeah.
So,
did you run into any of these issues with E?
In terms of intimacy?
Intimacy or protectiveness around dating or...
So what's interesting about E is that they will still touch me. Like, I have friends whose kids stopped touching them at 11, and they mourned that loss, right? Because parenting is so intimate.
The child mourns it. The child's only doing it because of society. Do you think the child...
Some kids are just like, meh. Like they...
Well, yeah. Certainly the kid will go through a phase where they want to assert their autonomy and break free. But they don't want to give up intimacy entirely the way that teenagers, particularly boys, will do out of a way of establishing their toxic masculinity.
Yeah, I'm very curious if there would be a survey of kids raised by lesbians and non-binary people if they are more secure with physical connection than other people.
Why would that be?
Because they are raised in a culture that has so much less toxic masculinity in it that it's just not modeled for them, that you would stop touching each other, that touch is weak, that emotions are weak. So E and I have a weekly TV night, and like one of us will always end up like putting their foot on the other. Like, we're not like super close on the couch, but I notice like there's still that call of like,
yeah,
deep down, you're my number one person. Mm-hmm. But dating. So I was an I don't want to say I was atypical.
Mother.
I was an atypical mother in a lot of ways, but we were really encouraging of dating and individuating in our house. And there were pitfalls and great moments, and but
because just for context, E is what, 21? 20?
Yeah.
And E has dated for
yes.
the past 3 years at least.
Earlier, they were an early dater. They were dating
has a serious partner over the past couple years.
Yeah.
The loveliest couple in all of Seattle. Makes me cry just thinking about
But I know of parents who, don't let their kids date, which I think is insane. Like, let your kid practice all that stuff while they have you. So we were really, when they're young.
But did you feel any kind of loss? Like,
competition?
Wow,
No.
E is spending all this time with.
I mean, I was annoyed that I was driving 45 minutes each direction.
Were you worried, like,
I'm going to lose that? Because we have a secure attachment. I'm not worried about that.
Okay, that's interesting. Or that someone's going to hurt E?
I mean, watching your teenager get hurt is one of the, you watch your child get hurt as a little kid and you can pick them up and scoop them up and it's over in a matter of minutes. But watching your teenager get their heart broken or friendships fall apart. I've done this work clinically. You probably have too. I mean, assisting a teenager as they lose their best friend for any number of reasons, that pain, that loss it is so epic.
And E feels big.
Yes, they're an Aquarius. There's a lot of feelings. But also E grew up in a house where emotions are safe. Mm-hmm. And they're allowed to feel big.
Mm-hmm. And E went through some formative years during COVID.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So there's a level of intensity, but you and I probably have both dealt with in our practice teenagers who are not given permission to feel, not given permission to individuate, who are punished for individuating or shamed for individuating. Who are shamed that their body changes in any way whatsoever during adolescence. I mean, this is a major, who are truly scapegoated in the family system because they are individuating and different and they're having big feelings and the rest of the family system cannot deal and the power dynamics go really intense. I mean, is that one of the number one reasons people come to family therapy?
You could argue broadly, yeah, but
I used to say, what is the diagnosis? It's teenagers in the home.
Well, the very, just briefly, common scenario would be a 14-year-old is almost always 14, if maybe 15 because they waited too long. And it's a 14-year-old who is, very different now, talking back, upset.
No longer that sweet little kid.
Yeah. Maybe
no longer. Now they're wearing brooches.
Yeah, they're dancing weird. They're listening to something called Duran. I don't even know what.
They're a vegetarian now, and there's something else is political that they're doing that makes them intolerable to the family.
In all seriousness, they're
stopped going to church.
They are skipping school. Mm-hmm. They're running away from home.
They're taking drugs.
They're using weed usually. They are shoplifting. Mm-hmm. Did I say their grades are going down? They have new friends.
They're no longer doing a hobby that the family put a ton of money into.
They quit volleyball or something. Mm-hmm. Now they're playing video games all the time. They're in their room all the time. They're being snotty with the parents.
They don't shower.
Maybe. Or they shower too much. You've been there before. I can tell by that very quick cackle. I can tell. So, that's what I would see. But anyway,
let me just say, all of those things are perfectly normal adolescent process.
Yeah, and it's perfectly normal for parents to be freaked as shit.
Yeah.
About that, and they should be. And family therapists are the best people to drag your kid to.
Yeah.
Because we can figure out what's going on.
Or I mean, what happens is, for me, is the identified patient gets sent to me for art therapy, and we just make art in silence for weeks and weeks and weeks, and the kid doesn't have to say anything.
Yeah.
And it's some of my favorite work.
Yeah, I bet. Let's take a break. There's another email, similar topic.
Ooh.
So we're back from the break. Got an email. Middle tier patron, anonymous patron, and YouTube member. She says, "Hi, Dr. Kirk and Rebecca. What are things you might do with a client? What are the things you would do with a client who is a cis-het female? She has a history of severe childhood trauma. Cis-het female, history of severe. She didn't have examples of appropriate male nurturance in childhood, only sexualized male attention or violence. She is now in a blended family and is interpreting her new husband's relationship with his teenage daughter as being inappropriate. So you see the theme, right?
Yes.
She's saying that she didn't witness appropriate, love or intimacy or relationship between a father or stepfather and a daughter. And she's now looking at her husband and going like, what's he doing with my daughter? But the client describes what sounds like appropriate father-daughter closeness, like sitting close together while watching a movie with daughter's head on dad's shoulder. Daughter wearing dad's shirts sometimes. Dad openly saying he loves the daughter. Dad expressing need for alone time with all his children, including the teenage daughter. Also, the client experiences daughter as a threat and a competition for her husband's affection, and she feels uncomfortable anytime dad is alone with teenage daughter. End of email. What do you think about that?
So this is about emotional regulation. So a lot of trauma is about tolerating stimuli and not taking it to a place of danger. So her brain has been wired that head on the shoulder and wearing daddy's shirts is a dangerous thing when it's not. So if we were doing trauma-focused work, we would try and unwind that story and learn to regulate in those situations and not find them as triggers or investigate why they are triggers.
Right. Which it's so interesting that you're showing your expertise when you're talking in that way. But in order to engage in that conversation, the client, the mother, would have to agree that regulation is warranted, because if she still believes, no, you understand, there's something fishy going on here, you wouldn't say you need to calm down. Right,
but we would look at, so in the trauma, so I'm speaking of the work of Dr. Janina Fisher and Pat Ogden. This is sensory motor work where the first issue is stabilization. So if somebody, so we are talking about someone getting out of the window of tolerance. This person is going into hyperarousal, and we're trying to investigate why. Why is your nervous system jacked up? Why are you looking for danger? And you've got to build trust there first with the client to get into that conversation.
And maybe you might say, even if something is happening, you're not going to do any good if your arousal level is at a 10. So let's, first things first, bring you back to regulation. And if something is happening, then you can think more clearly.
Yeah. And there's also family systems work here. What did your family look like when you were a teenager?
Yeah.
To get into that. But I have seen this a lot.
Oh, you have?
Yeah. I mean, blended families are a fucking minefield, and it's always...
But this specific thing where...
it's funny, what I heard was that this is the dad's bio kid.
No,
this is the dad's step kid. And this kid craves intimacy with a male role model for some reason.
Well, let's assume that the family did well by introducing the stepdad into the family in a way that they bond. And
that's very impressive. I'm impressed.
Yeah,
that doesn't happen.
Not always, especially with teenagers, because they've got. But that's the ideal,
right? And she, so the stepdaughter may be leaning in even harder because she's not a bio kid and she craves that closeness. So when she does get the approval of the stepdad, it means even that much more. Because I'm curious what the relationship is like with the bio dad, or if he's even in the picture. It's pretty rare that people crave that kind. Or
it could be a kid like E, where
this is child in Aquarius,
where the kid just feels free to express their needs, and underneath all of our stupid Victorian American bullshit is a lot of need for affection and togetherness. And so it just could be evidence that this person's client, or well, they're not saying it's their client, but they're saying a hypothetical, that this hypothetical client raised her daughter so well that the daughter is feels free to be able to express her needs for affection. And there's nothing more bonding and regulating than watching a movie together and putting your head on your dad's shoulder.
Right. I mean, when we are with each other, when we sing together, when we dance together, when we cuddle, your heartbeats actually sync up, and you begin to co-regulate. When you gaze into each other's eyes, your nervous system relaxes. This is early childhood development stuff. These are all things, that's the social engagement system. These are all things that calm people.
And we need it.
Yeah. When you wear each other's clothes, you are saying you are a member of my tribe and I claim you. Like, this is how we meet, right? Or like the fact that I watched Fallout once by myself, and when E was like, I want to watch it again with you. And
Does E play Fallout?
No, but they grew up watching other people play it on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
When your grown-ass child says to you, I want to watch Fallout again with you, I'm like, yeah, name the time. Like, I will do anything to bond with you again.
Yeah, that's really nice. You and E have a great relationship. You always have. I just remember, meeting E for the first time at Gay Pride, and E really just wanted to hold on to both. They were maybe 8 or 9 or something, and E wanted to hold both of our hands while we walked and swing in between us. And it's funny to think about E being that small, because E's what, like 6'4" now or 6'3".
Yes. No one's swinging. They're swinging me.
Yeah, and you and I were, but it got, a Gay Pride takes like, I don't know, 4 hours to march, and my arm was just killing me, and he's just like, more, again. Back from the break. So Rebecca, tell me the story.
Okay, so we're talking about why I have so much hearing damage in my left ear, and it's due to childhood neglect. I had a really bad tonsil infection when I was a kid that was untreated. And I was saying what all the time to my mom, and she was yelling at me, telling me that I was being snotty and disrespectful for not listening, but really...
Can we just do an asterisk on that?
Okay.
I don't understand why people get upset when you ask them to repeat themselves. Do you think like we're purposely trying not to hear you? If I'm looking straight at you and concentrating because you're saying it for a second time or third time and I still can't hear you, don't get mad at me.
Well, so imagine doing that to a teeny tiny
I know. I just don't understand that. It's like, maybe it's not you. Maybe it's not the speaker. Maybe it is the listener. Maybe there is something wrong with your hearing, but I don't understand the anger.
Yeah. Nothing's getting done. I'm down to like, I've lost 80% of hearing in one ear.
So I don't know if you said this on the microphone or not, but you had a tonsillitis problem.
Yeah.
And then an infection spread to your ears, which is common.
Yeah.
And you don't remember having any other
I didn't get any
symptoms.
Oh, I was constant runny nose.
Oh, but it wouldn't be apparent that you have an infection based on the symptoms. And but a more attentive parent would have
something seriously wrong.
Eventually said like, what's going on with my kid? Because a month ago she wasn't constantly saying what all the time. So maybe I should take her into the doctor. But given your mom's approach to parenting and the early 70s approach to parenting, you were not attended to and your ear had permanent damage. Yeah.
So the University of Milwaukee at Wisconsin is one of the first colleges to offer childcare. So I am at an early childcare center on a college campus. Because my parents both teach at the university. They have a lot of medical students at this university, and they use the kids at the daycare center to teach pediatrics. They put all of us through an early pediatric ear exam where you raise your hand, beep, you raise your hand. my results are so bad. So this is a random screening.
Right.
My results are so bad that they shame the medical student and bring the teacher in to show the guy how to really, or the woman to really do the test. The first test is correct. My hearing is that bad.
Wow.
So it's this. I could have gone completely deaf if it hadn't been.
Oh, the infection was still there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Which sense?
Or you could have a brain infection.
Yeah.
You could have had all sorts of complications.
Yeah. And this gets everything moving and gets my tonsils out. But I have a lot of scar tissue in my ear to the point that if any doctor ever looks in my ear, they're like, whoa, we should send you to a specialist. And I have to tell the whole story.
So they can see the scar tissue from the other side of the eardrum, from the outside of the eardrum.
I mean, yeah, when they put that thing in your ear and they look.
Yeah. So it's not just scar tissue in the inner ear.
No.
Wow.
Yeah.
So every time you say what, you think of your mom's lack of attunement.
I feel so bad now. Like, I just, poor everybody that has to relate to me. Like, this dynamic is fine. I'm fine in session. But if, like, I'm in a social environment and, like, someone's talking to me from another room, or someone's got their back turned to me and they're trying to tell me something, or I was saying, like, if I'm lying on the couch and my good ear and my bad ear is up to the world, I can't hear Jack. And then we were talking about how I am a bad candidate. After 8 months of testing and brain scans and all of these things to figure out what was the source of my current hearing loss, I finally got in to get a hearing aid test. And
why would it be a mystery as to why you were having hearing issues?
I think they were just double checking.
Oh.
Who knows, the American healthcare system.
Well, better
They tested
double
my
check.
hearing twice. I mean, it was just epic. Anyways, I finally get in for a hearing aid test 8 months after this whole thing has started. And all I can hear is myself breathing with the hearing aid in. And I could not edit out that sound. And I'm not a candidate for a hearing aid.
Yeah.
So they started talking to me about behavior mod stuff, basically, and telling me that I just have to explain to everyone in my life that you cannot talk to me if you're in another room.
Yeah. Well, okay, so email. Anonymous patron. She says, hello, Dr. Hannah and Rebecca. I am a feminist, and I am having a hard time dealing with my anger when I encounter gender equality issues happening to me or others. Mm-hmm. I have a hard time trusting men, and it's affecting my relationships, even though I barely have any male friends. I often avoid talking about gender equality issues with men around me, the men around me, because I don't want to be disappointed by their views. Just chiming in here. Yeah. Have you talked about the man versus bear in the woods thing yet? No, but I'm having a guest on the podcast talk about it, Kate Stewart, and I'd like to hear your views.
So,
or give people a rundown of, because I didn't even really know what this is.
So I thought it was fascinating. This woman says, "Hey world, if I were in the woods and I came across a man or a bear, I would feel safer with the bear." The internet has not stopped talking about it since. It's come up with every single client.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I am talking about it all with everyone.
What are people saying about it?
Well, what's really interesting about it is why a woman would choose a bear over a man. And one of the biggest things that's happening is that men are getting really, really defensive and saying, women know you're wrong. You should choose me over a bear. And the women are saying back, you're not listening why I'm choosing a bear over you. And there's been some beautiful, poignant responses, one of which is a bear wouldn't video me and then share it with all their friends. A bear wouldn't argue with me. So the content that's been endlessly produced out of this, I think it was just like a tweet or something, like I don't think she had any idea what she was igniting, has been incredibly poignant. And I've had a lot of really profound conversations with women about why they feel unsafe with men, the patterns of behavior that have led them to feel unsafe, and that there is a predictability to saying, hey, I'm going to tell you why I feel unsafe, and a man is going to then argue back.
Yeah.
And like that.
Like she's choosing to feel unsafe or something.
Yeah. And the amount of times that women are just doing their thing and men come at them as if they are stupid, a sex object, a child, not worthy of stating their opinion. Literally, their opinion has no meaning. I mean, all of these things are coming out of it.
Yeah.
And why this podcast guest? What makes them the right candidate to talk about this?
Kate Stewart, an old friend, she reached out to me and said, I want to come on your podcast and talk about it. It's funny because I thought what Kate was referring to is another funny aspect of internet culture regarding gender is that I can't remember the exact stat or observation, but my memory is that recently a lot of people would walk up to men and say, do you think you can take on a bear? If you're alone in the woods, you don't have a gun or a knife or anything, and you encounter a bear, do you think you could win the fight? And an alarmingly high percentage of men said that they thought they could take on a bear.
So I often on this podcast, one of the often comments is Rebecca doesn't like men, which I always think is funny because you and I are sitting together for 2 hours. So I clearly like you.
Yeah. Rebecca, I get zero sexism vibes towards me at all, completely. And really just in general, I don't detect. And if I do, I'll say something.
Yeah, you often call me on my shit. But
it's rare that it happens, honestly.
But so when I am in other situations where sexism happens and I have to stand my ground, or in the situations where I don't choose to stand my ground and I, crumble, I think the question is, what do I do with my rage about sexism in the world? And sometimes it's living well is the best revenge. I try to build a life that is outside of a sexist paradigm. I've been pretty lucky to be able to do that. This was an interesting part of my sex therapy certification is the last trainer did a discussion on sexual citizenship where we reviewed all the rights or lack of rights that we had due to the place that we live in. And the presenter was from Colombia or Peru, sorry. And she was talking about how in her culture she did not have reproductive freedom and there was forced sterilization and all of the stuff. And I was realizing one of the amazing aspects of where I live is I get to choose when and where and how to have a child. And I made that choice for myself. And that is because several generations of women before me fought against sexism that I got to make that choice. So I live in a pretty amazing time in a region of the country where I have a tremendous amount of autonomy and can avoid sexism to the point now when it happens to me. I was at a crafts fair around Christmas and there was a lot of very typical Seattle men running craft booths who wanted to tell you everything about their thing.
Which version of typical? Meaning that they're hipsters and super super
geeky.
Tech nerd
dudes.
Yeah. Okay.
Doing their little craft projects.
They've emerged from the basement with
their cool little things that they've come up with.
Yeah.
They're not reading social cues. And they're just talking and talking and talking. I was with my friend who's non-binary, and I just looked at them and I was like, you can continue to stay in this booth. I have to walk away. And they looked at me very knowingly. They were enjoying the conversation they were having, but I was done.
Yeah, I'm like that too. Stacy will be totally fine listening to someone mansplain and or just yammer, hence that she's married to me. But I have no tolerance for it. I only have so many years left on this planet. I'm not going to waste it staring blankly at someone while they just drone on and on and on.
So I walked away. I looked at my friend and I was like, I gotta go to the next thing. And the look on this man's face when I walked away mid-sentence, and the other friend is staying there to listen.
But he's also trying to sell you something, right?
Right, but I wonder if you had stayed at that booth and did a survey, how many people didn't feel like they had the power to walk away.
Most people don't. I'm glad you're one of the enlightened people. I find myself to be in a very small group of people that are totally fine just walking away. The thing that I always say is, if someone's doing that to me, they do that to everybody.
Yes.
So this person who's yammering is used to people just walking away from them because that's the only way to disengage from them.
Yeah.
So I'm not doing anything new to them. Mm-hmm. Whereas other people, if mid-sentence you walked away, it might literally be the only time that's ever happened to them, and they would be shocked and hurt. But these people, so I'm actually surprised that he was upset.
Yeah. Well, and I think that is, I'm curious if it had to do with gender, right? Because there is this expectation that I won't walk away, right? That I have to stay and listen because there is a man.
Yeah. Did you do anything to soften the blow, like look at your phone or anything? I mean, you don't have to,
right?
But there are ways.
I was thinking, like, what if I had to pee? Or this actually is reminding me of an experience that I was in. That, like, women are socialized to stay and listen.
Yeah.
To the point that, like, they're, they have to go to the bathroom, but they will not do it because they have been socialized to ignore how their bodies are functioning and just stay and listen. So it is when you confront sexism, you're often told that you're a really bad person.
Yeah. So getting back to an honest patron, she is saying she's having a hard time dealing with her anger. She has a hard time trusting men. She avoids talking about gender equality issues with the men around her because she doesn't want to be disappointed by their views, which I completely understand. I mean, so just a side note on this, it's an interesting time because, you and I, same age, in the 90s, when we were going through college and graduate school, we were in a rare group of people that were enlightened about sexism and racism and other things. 99.9% of people were not in those circles. Most people just didn't even get the Cliff Notes version of what was happening. And so I remember feeling very separate in terms of my viewpoint on things. I was a feminist as soon as I was invited to be one in the early 90s. And I was probably the only guy I knew in, among hundreds of guys that would even come close to calling themselves a feminist. Like I remember that chasm, and I would want it to be different, but I resigned to it being the way that it was. Now we live in a time where it seems like these ideas are out there because of the activism, particularly online, and because young people are smarter about this sort of stuff.
So smart.
That we have it out there so much that, because when Anonymous Patron says that she avoids even bringing up the topic of gender and feminism because she's afraid of what the other person will say, that's my default mode because that's how my life has been for so long. Mm-hmm. I mean, it goes back to when I was born as a half Japanese abomination. Mm-hmm. I couldn't talk about that experience with white people because, just think about the 70s, for Christ's sake. And so it was just a fact that, of course, you can't talk about this. And of course, the people that are close to you, that you love, of course they have regressive points of view because that's just the way the world is. Now we live in a world where maybe someone doesn't have a regressive point of view. So it still sucks, but right. I'm saying it's better than it was before.
And wouldn't it be a relief to this patron if a male counterpart brought it up? Like, hey, I'm really thinking about income equality today, and that you earn 97, you earn 75 cents to every dollar that I earn. Boy, how has that impacted your life? Like, sometimes I think about me versus your two other co-hosts, mm-hmm. and the fact that I hustle. I I have a couple side hustles that I do, including this podcast.
Yeah. Bob doesn't even know what hustle means.
Yeah. But, some of that is due to sexism. Like, those two men have consistently made so much more money than I have throughout their whole lifetime.
Bob's just a therapist, like.
Right. But male. So if you look at male and women therapists, men tend to move. Like, if you look at your average therapy agency, even though 95% of the people who go through therapy school are women, by the time you get to management, half of management will be men.
Absolutely. But Bob is not a rich guy.
Okay.
So that's not a thing. But what's your point?
My point is that I am always fascinated that I am the only co-host with
other gigs. Yeah.
With other gigs.
Yeah.
The women around me who have lots of gigs because they're trying to make up for all of that income that they never made. I would be fascinated. This would be a fascinating poll.
Right. Because if, in general, as a dude, you're much more likely to rise in the ranks and get a good paycheck so that you don't need extra income to pay your bills. Mm-hmm. And that point is, I understand completely. So going on with the email.
Okay.
I did therapy for 2 years. And I had a male therapist, which helped me a little bit with my trust issues. Okay. So questions. How does someone who's experiencing feminist rage find a therapist? Can most therapists help with that? If the therapist isn't a feminist or simply doesn't agree with the client's political views, does that affect outcome? So just chiming in here, Rebecca, what do you think?
I would say, yeah, you'd probably want to look for a feminist therapist. There are a lot of therapists out there that are not feminist, and I think that would only trigger you further. So I would want you to have a therapist that would really agree with your process mm-hmm. and not argue with you. I mean, nothing would be more frustrating than to have a therapist say, hey, that's not that big of a deal, or that's just you that thinks that.
Yeah. Well, in addition to that, Anonymous Patron, I'll say it depends on what you're going to therapy for, but if you're going to go to therapy and even possibly talk about anything in this category, then yeah. Now, maybe, depending on the landscape today and the region, the identification, I am a feminist, can mean different things to different people. So I wouldn't necessarily key in on that. I would just vet the therapist as you're shopping around as to what their views are on sexism. Just ask them, what are your views about sexism?
And are you okay with angry women? I mean, I think there's probably a lot of therapists out there that would try and placate an angry woman or think that the goal of therapy was to make the woman less angry.
Even other feminist women might have that internalization. You know what I mean?
I mean, that is internalized sexism, right? Mm-hmm. We shouldn't be this angry. We shouldn't be having these big feelings.
Right. And you're saying, can most therapists help with that? I mean, I could just speak anecdotally about Seattle, and I would say you'd have to look far and wide to find a therapist in our region who wasn't a feminist. Mm-hmm. And if they weren't a feminist...
And that's because of the training programs that come out of this region.
And it's just logical because it's data-based. It's like believing in gravity or not.
But there are other parts of the country that would not be the case.
Absolutely. And there's other parts of the country that deny science, like medical science and vaccine science, and that the earth is flat and that climate change isn't affected by our pollution. I say this because this isn't an opinion. It's not a take. It's not a philosophy. Feminism and the ideas of sexism, the observation of sexism, is a fact. It has been a fact. It will be a fact up until the day I die. It's not debatable. No one in science or in our field debates this in the same way that no climate scientist debates climate change.
But I'm trying to think of the language that I see that sometimes therapists use, which would be, I will help you be your best self, or ready to get in touch with your positivity. Like, those are therapists that would probably not be a good candidate for addressing feminist rage.
Yeah. Also, there's a lot of different types of therapists. I actually, a friend and I went to lunch yesterday, and he was telling me about his therapist, that he wanted my advice about what was happening. And in a nutshell, it sounded like his therapist was one of those therapists, a good therapist, but a style of therapy that's very listening oriented and empathy oriented, and completely devoid of any kind of feedback or confrontation or analysis or interpretation or anything like that. And that's fine. I've had a therapist like that. I personally don't like that kind of therapist. It's very comforting, but I didn't feel like I was getting much out of it other than a place to vent, which is good, and sometimes I need that. But I typically want the kind of therapist that engages, not only just to feel like I'm being engaged with, but also will check my shit and also observe, because it's not just a matter of listening versus confrontation. There's also like a lot of observation. That's 90% of what I do, is I say, okay, this is what I'm hearing, and this is how it sounds like you're saying this. And if I were in your shoes, this is how I might feel. Or if I was in the other, I'm doing a lot of that kind of stuff.
And the modern language that's getting used for a therapist that can handle rage in the therapy session due to oppression is decolonizing. Are you decolonizing therapy? So if I was this patron, I might look for a therapist who uses that language or is citing important therapy feminist thinkers. I'm thinking of the work of Judith Herman. Dialectical behavior therapy is another feminist therapy. I don't know how much room for anger that one would give.
Yeah, it really just depends. You could have a DBT therapist that was very in line with how you and I would approach anger in a client, but you could have another DBT therapist that would be very cognitive oriented, of like your work, you're choosing to get angry. You want to change your cognitions and do your relaxation, mindfulness. Going on with your email, I also want to have a therapist where I can speak about current world problems. I currently live in Seattle. Oh, I missed that part, which, as you know, is way better than other places. Still, I feel like my views on some issues can be seen as opinionated or offensive to others, and I hesitate going to therapy where I need to talk about how world events affect me. What's the appropriate way to discuss that in therapy?
You should just be able to discuss that. Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine having a therapist, and I'm sure there are times where I've misstepped and like geared someone towards family of origin versus discussing some huge world problem. But we've never lived in a time where people are more impacted by the outside world. Yeah. I think it's complicated now. I guess it's always been complicated, but in general, anonymous patron, if you just randomly picked a therapist in Seattle and sat down and said, I want to talk about my rage about sexism that I experience and my hurt and my fears, I would imagine most therapists would say, lay it on me, and would not approach it in a mansplainy or shutdowny kind of way. But that's just a guess. Having said that, if you had a point of view that even slightly diverged from the party line, the party liberal Seattle line, in the therapy office, and this is just anecdotal, there's a chance that the therapist might literally fire you because they can't handle a difference there. Like if you came in and anonymous patronage, talked about all the, basic things we're talking about now, but also talked about like session 7 or something, you're like, but sometimes I feel like feminists go too far in a couple ways. Whether you're right or wrong or whatever, it doesn't really matter. You should be allowed to discuss that. Oh, yeah.
But I have seen reports of therapists, not that I know in person, but that I know of. They'll ask, is it okay if I fire this client? And the majority response is, yeah, you got to draw boundaries, and that's bullshit, and that's triggering. And I'm like, what the fuck? Therapy is a sacred place, motherfuckers. Yeah, like,
you've got to have
if you can't handle like a different point of view, and also like, okay, fine. What good does it do to fire them? If you want to change their mind, then, do your therapist job.
Hang in there.
Yeah. Or leave it at the door. Like, you're there to heal people. There's a higher calling than tweaking someone's random point of view about things.
Or that you have to agree with every statement that comes out of someone's mouth.
Or that a slightly differing point of view is triggering to you. Like, go back to grad school or get a supervisor, for Christ's sake. Like, get your shit together. And I understand if you have trauma and you've been triggered, then let's deal with it. But that's not the client's fault, you understand? And you need to screen people better. I don't know if I'm misunderstanding what's happening in those discussions.
No, I think there's a lot of, Seattle definitely is a place where there's not a lot of room for nuance. Or just sitting with someone that you don't agree with. Like, it's okay that we're not 100% reflecting each other back to each other.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, I assumed for my, the first 48 years of my life that no one agreed around me with how I felt unless they were a therapist. I assumed that everyone around me disagreed. And you know what? I didn't cancel or fire or break up or reject everyone around me because I want people in my life. And I understand that everyone has a different path. And if I'm going to change their mind, then I have to...
You gotta hang with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that there's a really interesting dynamic of people feeling like they have to be 100% reflected in each other, which actually goes back to our first question about the mommy-child dynamic. Part of being secure in yourself is that you can tolerate a level of difference, a level of individuation. And I don't know if it came out of the pandemic or what, but there is a lot of people feeling so brittle that they can't tolerate any level of discussion or nuance.
So let's adjourn.
Yes.
And tell me your favorite or the first song that comes to your head.
Tell me why
that would have provoked.
You and I together.
Who's that?
Dancing for our lives. Is that Bronski Beat?
It is by Bronski Beat. Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah, I know that song.
I'm sorry, everyone, that I just sang. I can't even imagine how torturous that was. But
for me, it's "Let's Go to Bed" by The Cure.
Oh yeah.
Bump, 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 bump. There's something about the beat that just provokes that kind of feet
swaying
together, hands, doing those things. So I'm going to listen to that after maybe a couple of drinks.
All that music was so good.
I know.
It doesn't get played enough. Whenever I'm
in my house it does.
Yes, constantly in my house. But whenever I'm at an 80s party and they don't play any of that music, I'm like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah, they play like MC Hammer and just Madonna and Michael or something, which is all great. But yeah, there's these kind of tracks. And I was a 20-something in the 90s and loved 90s music. A lot of it I wasn't a fan of. I never liked like the Blink 182 or the Creed aspect, God bless, or what was the big country star?
Oasis?
Oasis. God, the obsession with Oasis. They're fine, but Garth Brooks, of course, wasn't really into because I have taste. No, just joking. I'm from the city, so we don't really. But when I hear at pottery, me and Stacey, we do pottery, and the teacher will put on a playlist. And this young guy, he's probably, I don't know, he's 25, 30. He has the wildest, diversity. I find that a lot of young people.
The whole world is open to them.
Yeah. The first class, it was all wall to wall. The Scottish band from the 80s with the girl singer.
Oh, Cranberries?
No, they're from the 90s.
Sorry.
God damn it. 80s
Scottish band with girl singer.
Scottish band.
This is like shame. Shonda bringing to my 80s self.
Oh God. So he will play a playlist from the 80s or from the 90s, and when I hear the 90s playlist, I can't stand most of that music. Even stuff that I liked back then, I, might enjoy. But
I made a 90s playlist. I wanted to see.
Ooh, okay.
So, Lauryn Hill,
Yeah.
Missy Elliott, Queen Latifah, that stuff, UNITY,
Yeah.
Diggable Planets,
Yeah.
Salt and Pepper,
Yeah.
Lil' Kim,
Salt and pepper. Just saying.
sorry, No Doubt, Smash Mouth, The Cardigans.
Oh my God, I love the Cardigans. So the Cardigans, you know, that Lovesick song, Love Me, Love Me. I'm not a fan of that song. I've heard it too many times. But if I was on a desert planet and I could only bring like 3 bands, it would be The Strokes, the Cardigans, the Beatles, and the Smashing Pumpkins.
CC and the Music Factory.
Oh my God.
Prince. That was in Prince and the New Power Generation.
I had CNC Music Factory on CD in the 90s.
CC Peniston. Allison Morissette comes out of this time. Wreck and Effect. Rump Shaker.
Alison Morissette.
Yeah.
That's not her name.
No.
Why?
Alanis Morissette.
Alanis.
I'm switching her up with
I was like, I know that's not right.
Fatboy Slim.
Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. This is all good, but you know,
EMF. This is Katie Lang's greatest
EMF.
period.
EMF is gonna rock you.
Radiohead comes. All of Beck's early stuff.
Yeah.
Weezer, U2 stuff. Jane's Addiction. Alice in Chains.
Yeah, yeah.
Mercy Playground. PJ Harvey comes out.
Cocktail Twins.
Oh, I love them. Portishead. Stone Temple Pilots. Soundgarden.
Yeah. Wow. I
Four
love
Non-Blondes. Cake.
Yeah.
Blind Melon.
Which song by Cake?
She's Going the Distance.
Yeah, that's a great song. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Pavement.
Oh my God.
Primitive Radio Gods.
I did not peg you as a Pavement fan. I love Crooked Rain. I listened to that nonstop in 1994.
Bjork comes out in this time.
Which Bjork song?
Human Behavior.
Yeah, great song. But
Collective Soul. Fiona Apple comes out.
Oh my God, Fiona Apple.
Moby, Belly, Sophie B. Hawkins. In Excess is still making music then. Screaming Trees, Sublime, Collective Soul. Liz Phair comes out. Bikini Kill, Sinead O'Connor, Seal, Natalie Merchant. I could go on and on.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Well,
Annie DeFranco comes out.
Yeah. All right. I didn't realize you're a Stone Temple Pilots fan.
I like good music.
Yeah.
I get super picky though.
Yeah.
I was at someone's house recently and they were playing kind of Kenny G-ish music.
Local hero.
Yeah. I was like, huh.
Yeah. That's rough. But at least it's easy listening.
Yes.
It's rough when it's like grating music.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So I gotta go.
Yeah, yeah.
But we should take care of yourself because
You should do it. Yeah, you do it this time.
Oh, Kirk.
You gotta start from the beginning.
Okay, sorry. Deserving listener, you should take care of yourselves because I think you're great. I think you're great. You're doing great. Things are really tough. You keep showing up. You keep listening to this podcast. It's going to make your brain better and bigger. Thank you, everyone, for supporting the podcast and letting us do this crazy, wacky thing that we're doing. Thanks for continuing to send in interesting questions. Okay,